Hey, y'all. um, I'm on a business trip. As you can see, there's no beautiful aqua or any good thing behind me. However, yeah, it. All I can say is there is no pan this time. We have no pan, y'all. All right, so we're all right though. Everything's gonna be all right. Everything, okay, guys? So don't be afraid. Everything's good. Really good. All right, you hear me now? You hear me? That's all I'm gonna say. I don't know nothing, y'all. Okay. I talked to my advisor, y'all. I did. I talked to him and asked him questions for you. So I said, is there anything to be afraid of? And he said, as far as I know, at this point, they know there will be false flags, but there is nothing on the security report that you need to prepare for. And if there is, I will let you know. So, as we all know, the Baltimore Bridge was destroyed by the cabal. And we know that they are active in infiltrating inside the system of our Happy Day operations. It is not the fault of the White Hats. There is no delay. There is no, what should I say? What has everybody always said? No delay, no. Anyway, good enough. You get the picture. We're moving along. Everything is still moving forward. They will not stop us. They cannot. They cannot. Just so you know, they cannot prevent us from going forward. So, but we need to pray. That's our part. We actually are a part of this whole thing, and we have to pray this through because it is a dangerous time, right? But we are going forward. So, you have to be led by the Holy Spirit. You have to know what God is telling you to do for the next week or so. All right. So it would probably be good to not be in crowds, not be in settings where there are a lot of people. Stay close to home for another week, maybe. But as far as we know right now, there is nothing to be concerned about or to prepare for. All right. I'm going to let you know if there is. Okay. So it is not a very comfortable time going forward, but we are going to go forward, and we have won, and we will come out victorious on the other side. All right. I just want you to know it is the end game. We are going forward. Okay. All right. So we are taking care of really last minute deadlines for people in Trisara. And I'm sorry it was cut so close for some of you today and even tomorrow. But, it's like I'm on the road. It's really hard to take care of things as when they come, when it comes time that I have to. I'm stretched in so many directions right now. But we'll take care of it. And it isn't, what do I want to say? We're not the pros, guys. We're just doing our best. So please be patient with us, okay? All right. I wish I would have gotten my phone. My phone is being plugged in right now, but maybe I'll get it and tell you at the end that someone had a vision about me. And it was the most beautiful vision, and I think it will help you as well. And it was Patricia that had the vision. I want to tell you that meant a lot to me. That really hit home for me. Beautiful. All right. So I'll tell you that at the end. I'll go get my phone while Thomas is speaking, and then I'll tell you what the vision was. All right. Okay. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Thomas B. the third, and he is going to talk to you about the incredible, historic, once in a lifetime symbolism of the eclipse. All right. So, welcome, Thomas. He's here. He really is. It's going to be all right. We'll get him in. All right. Any moment. Okay. Make sure that your mic is on. There he is. Hey, welcome. I just want to say that I felt I got a connection from a friend to call you because of your message on the eclipse. And then when I called you, you said God told me you were calling me. You were going to call me. So I think you need to turn on your mic. And I'll let you take it from here. Well, there you go. You got it.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, a little, my mic just fell off my stand here. So I was hoping it was not destroyed.
Okay.
But thank you so much for the intro. And I want to say hello to everyone on your channel. I do watch your channel periodically. Have been keeping up with a lot of channels right now, the ones that count anyway, and yours certainly does.
Oh,
So thank you so much for the invite tonight.
you're welcome. It's an honor to have you.
Well, I guess by way of introduction, I just want to let everyone know that I am actually working for a nonprofit organization that is bringing a frequency device to market, and I'm involved in a proof of concept study. And as a result of that, I have a team that is, we get together twice a week, and we take the personal shares and experiences of our members. Quite fascinating what's happening right now. There are a lot of things that are on the way that are going to be so dynamic for everybody. And the world is changing, isn't it? And it's changing for the good. And when you asked me to come on and talk about the eclipse, my take is a little bit unique because I've understood that there are about 20 million different unique videos out there right now about this eclipse event. So everybody's talking about it. And I had no intention of speaking about this at all because it was so well covered. And many of the platforms that are covering it, I am in alignment with and agree with. But there's a lot of them that I don't. There's a lot of that, that fear out there. And I do not see this event in that way at all. So I want to bring some information. I guess I would start out by saying this. I am a very spiritual person. I am not at all religious anymore. I was raised in the Catholic denomination and then branched off into the Protestant denominations for about 15 years. I am an ordained minister. So those two connections right there sort of make me spiritually bipolar. And so I just, try to find the middle ground now. And that's really where I come from. And I want to let y'all know that I am into words. I love words. I love looking at words, defining words. And I find it's very important to do that right now because there is this, this thing underway where they are slowly changing the definition of our words. And if we let this happen within, a few decades, we will be probably not even talking the same language. So this all led me into the study of Gematria, which I have been involved in for about 20 years now. And the reason why I am into this area is because it became very apparent to me that those dark hat deep state players, they have to tell us what they're going to do before they do it. They project it in that way, and you all know that. And what they like to do is tell us what they're going to do in a different language. They do it in ways that we can't really easily recognize. And one of those ways that they use, it's very common, is through the use of numbers. And so if you're watching a movie, for example, many of you know this, pay attention to the numbers. Look at the numbers on a license plate. You might see that for about a second. You will see numbers on addresses or numbers on clocks. And those numbers are all very significant. There's not any of them that I have seen that are not significant. And you have to be able to basically look these numbers up. The common way that they like to project their ideas is through the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible. Now, for those of you who do not know, that is a work that has been around since the late 1800s. It basically has taken every word in the Bible and just collated them and put them in alphabetical order and numbered them. And so when you look into Strong's, there will be a number associated with each of the Bible words. And that is how they project their messages. So that's the reason why I do Gematria. I love to take the numbers back because they don't belong to them. And so I love to call them word numbers. You'll hear me talking about word numbers here tonight. And when I am speaking about that, I will be referring to Strong's Concordance of the Bible. And the cipher that I will be using here tonight seems to be the most common cipher that is being used. And that is called simple gematria. And for those of you who are not aware of what that is, it's simply A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, and so on, all the way to Z, which is 26. And so what you do is when you see a word or a phrase, you just connect the dots with the numbers. And then that way you can take it from there and find out secret encoded meanings that are being put out there. So I am going to be talking with you tonight about predominantly Hebrew and Greek words. I'm not going to be talking to you in Hebrew and Greek. That could get us in trouble. But what I am going to be doing is I want you to know that in Hebrew, for example, their letters are also their numbers. And so they can easily be converted one way or the other. They have a dual purpose. And this is what I'm going to be doing by way of just kind of laying this out tonight. In order for me to talk about the April 8th eclipse, I'm going to have to talk about a couple of the other ones and another special event that occurred recently within the last few years. But as a way of example, in the group that I co-facilitate, we usually have a theme that we speak about every week. And last week, the theme was the sky is no limit. The sky is no limit. We normally get these in downloads. I'll wake up in the morning and boom, I hear it. So we'll just take it from there and just try to figure out what it is that God is trying to tell us to bring to our group. We call ourselves a tribe. And so last week I began in the first meeting. We have two, like I said, and so I'll do a series. And I did a teaching on that SpaceX Starship launch that occurred fairly recently. I didn't look up the date on that. It's been a few months, I think. But that was the one that had the 33 engines on it, and one of probably the most powerful rockets ever created and launched. And what I found very interesting about that was that in the lead up to that launch, there were delays like there usually are, and in the lead up they were actually talking about piercing the firmament. They were literally bragging about this. And those of you who follow the SpaceX launches, you know that they've been trying to get out, and that's what they've been up to. And there is actually footage that shows that they successfully pierced the firmament, but it self-repaired itself, it looks like, within just a matter of a few seconds, which I was very grateful for, because we don't want to end up in a Noah situation. And we're not going to be talking about Noah tonight. We will be talking about Jonah. That will be coming up here in just a few minutes. But the interesting part about the mention of the firmament is that they kind of let the cat out of the bag. And now we know for sure that this is not a myth. It's not a legend. It is not religious superstition in any way. And what I ended up finding through my research, my Gematria research, that's just one of the things I do. But I ended up being led to look at the Tetragrammaton, which I think that we could see slide number 1 right now, if that's possible to see. But the Tetragrammaton is the 4-letter name of God. It's a Hebrew. It's written in Hebrew. It's 4 letters, but it's actually only 3 because one of them is repeated. There it is right there. And what we're looking at is, in Hebrew, some of you know this, they write and they read from right to left. So it's completely opposite of what we do in English. So what you're looking at here, if you look at the letter on the right-hand side, that's a yod. And then the next one is a hey, and then a vav and a hey. So yod, hey, vav, hey. That is the name that we typically refer to as Jehovah or Yahweh. There is a more precise pronunciation that I will share with you right now. It's kind of forbidden, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because I think we should know God's name. And it is the name Yahuwah. So I refer to these 4 letters as Yahuwah. And what is interesting about that is that because these letters are also numbers, what we are looking at right here is the number sequence of 10, 5, 6, 5. 10, 5, 6, 5. That equals 26, by the way, and that is the value of this name. Now, if you follow Greg Braden's work, you will know that this sequence, 10, 5, 6, 5, is actually built into our DNA. And so every cell of our body has this name written on it. So God has written his name upon us. And so I just want you to know that I believe, based on this, that we are sort of like autographed copies of our own book of life. And another thing that Greg pointed out to us is that the beginning sequence of our DNA spells out a message, and the message is God eternal within the body. So I love that, God eternal within the body. We are introduced within our very cells to God. And so I believe that this is why many of us resonate so closely to this number and to this name. Now, what I found when I compared these two completely different ideas, the Tetragrammaton, or this name that you're seeing right here, with the firmament, the word for firmament in the book of Genesis, what I found is one common word that described both of these things, and it was the word overlaid. So overlaid. In the case of the firmament, it was saying in the reference books that it was overlaid with thin sheets of metal, or thin layers of metal. And I found that to be interesting. And the way that I found overlaid in this sacred name, you have to kind of go at it through the back door, and you have to use the number 6823, and that is 6,823 times that this name of God was removed from the Bible and replaced with the word Lord. So believe it or not, God got kicked out of the Bible. I mean, who does that? But they actually did. And that gave me uh, the translation of this word overlaid, but it was predominantly talking about being overlaid in gold. So when God says that we are golden, he literally means this, and we are golden to God both inside and out. So that's an example of how my mind works anyway, and that's an example of how gematria kind of plays out and tells us things that are hidden sort of in plain sight. Now, I wanted to talk tonight about the April 8th eclipse. And what is interesting about this, it is happening on April the 8th, and it is going to make landfall in Mexico at 11:07 a.m. So right there, we have two numbers to look at, and that's kind of exciting to a guy like me. April the 8th would be another way of saying April the 8th would be 4-8. So 4-8 is the number that I began with. And when you look at the number 4-8 in Strong's Concordance, one of those meanings, and there are two generally, just so I can lay that out real quick. There's usually a Old Testament Hebrew word, and there is a New Testament Greek word. Now, these don't always coincide with each other. These are two completely different languages, but there are those special times when both of the words line up, and I like to pay attention to any way that they come out. But 48, based on this date of April the 8th, it means to purify or to cleanse from defilement. And I found that to be really fascinating as a start off point, because it really is talking about a return to morality. And boy, do we ever need that in our society today, not only in America, but all the way around the world, both above ground and below. Now, the other number that was associated with this is the number 11:07, because I said 11:07 a.m. is when the path of totality will reach landfall in Mexico. And 11:07, I had to look through word fragments that basically showed me this message: not before, not until. So I had to ask the question, not before what? Not until what? And I think that that is what we're going to be looking at here as we progress. Now, just I want to go ahead and tell you that 11:07 in Gematria, it is perfectly okay. It's perfectly permissible to drop the zero. It's also very common for us to flip the word or mirror the word and look at it backwards, because there are codes that are hidden in all of these configurations. And I think it's really interesting that if you drop the zero in 11:07, you're left with what? The number 117 or 11:7. And that is actually the word majestic. So the majestic being tied to the cleanse from defilement, I find to be very, very inspiring. And if you flip that and you look at 7-Eleven, boy, is there ever a lot of fun in that. You know, you can look at that number in many, many different ways, and it's being projected out there in many different ways. But 7-Eleven in the Strong's Concordance actually means best counseling. So I'm just going to tell you that hopefully you are going to be receiving some information tonight that is going to be edifying and uplifting to you, because that's what this message is about. That's what these eclipses are about. Now, in order for us to understand all of this, we have to look at the book of Jonah. Well, why do we want to do that? How do we get there? In Luke chapter 11, verse 29, we see Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees, and they are asking him for another miraculous sign. And what Jesus says to them is that a wicked and perverse generation will seek after a sign, and the only sign that will be given to them will be the sign of Jonah. Now, many people teach and believe that this is a reference to when Jesus would go into the bowels of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. And it's actually written in there, so I'm not taking away from that. But I want you to consider this. A sign is not effective at all unless you're able to see it. So there would be no one in Jesus' time that would have been able to see any of that going on. So I believe that there is another aspect to this idea of the sign of Jonah, and that's what we're going to get to right now. Well, I've got to set the scene a little bit. I'm just going to have to ramble about this book of Jonah and set it up a little bit. And basically what happened was God had contacted Jonah, who was a prophet, and had told him that he wanted him to go to a city named Nineveh and to warn the king of Assyria that because of the wickedness of that of the people in that nation, I would assume that it's not everyone there, but the wickedness had gotten to the point that God had had enough and was going to destroy Nineveh, and he sent Jonah to give them the message. Well, as it turns out, Jonah had had some run-ins with the Assyrians, and he was not about this because he was concerned that God would possibly have mercy on them. And because of the violent acts that they had committed against his people, he wanted to see them destroyed. So what he does is he jumps on a ship and he heads in the completely opposite direction. Many of you know this story, but I have to lay it out. We often are told in Scripture that we can get a little carried away as human beings, and then we are asked to repent. And this is a word that kind of bothers us a little bit because it seems like we're being told what we have to do, and sometimes we're being told that we have to stop doing some things that we kind of like. And one of the definitions of this word repent, because I don't see it as a threatening word, I think it's very non-threatening. It just literally means stop. Just stop it. Turn around, do an about face, head in the other direction, and do the right things. And you would think that Jonah was repenting because this is exactly what he did. He went in the opposite direction, although this was not at all considered an act of repentance. So what happens is God creates a very violent storm, it says in the book of Jonah. And Jonah's just kind of not even paying attention. He's down inside of the ship sleeping. But the storm got so bad that the merchant sailors realized that they had to throw all of the merch that they had on board overboard to lighten the ship to save their lives, because they were taking on great water. But no matter what they did, nothing worked at all. And so they drew lots to determine who was responsible for this angry, angry sea. And they ended up determining that it was, in fact, Jonah. So they go and they get him. And they question him about what is going on. And he tells them that he is running away from a directive from God. And he also tells them, which is very unusual, that the best thing for them to do would be to throw him overboard to spare their lives. Well, they didn't really like that idea. They tried everything they could, but nothing worked. And in the end, they end up throwing Jonah overboard. And lo and behold, we know the story. He ends up being swallowed by a great fish, possibly a whale. That's a bit of a bummer. But Jonah spends 3 days and 3 nights inside of this whale. Let's just call it a whale. And that was probably a very gross experience, because he's in the dark, he's in the deep, he's inside of this thing, and it looks like it's the end of his life. And he is so stubborn that it takes him 3 days to finally cry out to God and say, okay, help. And so after hearing that prayer, God has the whale spit him up on the shore and repeats the same exact message to Jonah, verbatim. I can almost imagine God meeting him there saying, okay, Budrow, where were we? And, Jonah, I believe, was so concerned about the ordeal he had just gone through. Well, there was no way he wanted to become lion food at this point. So he just headed to Nineveh like pronto. And what was interesting is he reaches Nineveh, and as he shows up there, I try to imagine what he looked like after being in this acid bath. I would call it a saltwater spa experience. He's been in this acid, stomach acid, for 3 days. Probably his hair's all bleached out, his skin's bleached out, his clothes are bleached out, probably tattered. He looks like a whited out zombie, and he goes walking in to Nineveh in this, appearing this way, and he gives them this message that in 40 days, judgment is going to fall and they're all going to be destroyed. Well, what was very interesting about it is that when you study it, you find out that as he arrives just as a solar eclipse is happening right there. So this really freaks everybody out. It freaked the Assyrian king out, probably because he had lost, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 180,000 of his troops to an angel of the Lord who basically took them all out in one single day or night. And they remembered that. And when Jonah shows up in this way, it gets their attention. Jonah delivers the message, but he does not want to see this happen. So he just kind of hightails it out of the town. Probably he sets up a tent, it says, and he's just waiting. And I believe he's waiting for that time window to pass, expecting some sorties to fly over Nineveh, just dropping all kinds of fireworks and bombs and just blowing these people to kingdom come. That was what he wanted. And I imagine, in my wild mind, that after that event had taken place, he would have hightailed it over to the next town over on his way home, maybe stopped off at a fast food joint, got himself a fillet of fish, the biggest one he could find, and just devoured that thing just to show that whale who was boss. Now, I know that is a very exaggerated rendition of this story, but it's very accurate. And so they repented. In the end, they all repented. And God spares Nineveh. What that means to us is this mark, this sign of Jonah, is telling us, in my estimation, the same thing. We have a generation of people that have completely turned their back on God and God's ways. And now it's time for us to get the same message. And I believe that is exactly what we are experiencing right now through these eclipses. I am calling the sign of Jonah, at least one of the signs in my mind, is the solar eclipse. And Jesus said that a wicked generation would seek after a sign. Many of us are asking for one. Many of us are asking for one in a very positive way. Others are asking for one just to kind of save themselves. And he said that the only sign that we would be given is the sign of Jonah. We have received 3 of those signs in recent history. But in order to really set the stage, I want to go ahead and share with you. We'll go to slide 2. And I want to share with you another solar event that took place. I think many of you are aware of this. This is called the Revelation 12 sign. And this event actually occurred on September the 23rd of the year 2017. And it's very important. It actually happened, I believe it was 43 days after that, the first eclipse that we're going to look at here in this triad of eclipses. So Revelation 12 sign, September the 23rd. I wanted to go ahead and decode this date and see if I could find anything. What I found was when I flipped it from 9/23, which would be September 23, I flipped it to 3/29, and lo and behold, that was the term to stir up the fire. To stir up the fire. Now, I found that to be very, very interesting, because what do you see when you look at a solar eclipse? It almost looks like a circle of fire up there. And so I see this as no coincidence at all, because these eclipses, they are harbingers of coming attractions. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. But what you see here, I'll just go ahead and explain it briefly. It says in Revelation chapter 12, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And what we see here is that exactly is playing out. There is one woman in the sky. That is the constellation Virgo. She is clothed with the sun on this day because the sun is in the constellation of Virgo. And you can't, maybe you cannot see it because my head is right in the way, but the moon is at her feet and she is crowned with 12 stars. Actually, 3 of them are planets. You can see Mercury, Mars, and Venus there, but the constellation of Leo plus these 3 planets give us that number 12. And the interesting thing, in my mind, the most interesting thing, is that Jupiter had been in her womb or belly area for 9 months. It was in retrograde, just spinning around, moving in that area. And on this particular day, Jupiter began to leave the constellation of Virgo, which in my way of looking at it, that is indicative of this idea here in Revelation 12 about the birth. Now, much more could be said about this, but I have to move on for time's sake. So we'll go to slide number 3 right now. And what we're going to be seeing in slide 3, there's actually 2 eclipse paths here. The one I want you to notice is the one that starts over on the west coast and moves all the way over to the east coast. That is the first one. And the date of that event was 8/21/24. And this was known as the Great American Eclipse. And it crossed America from coast to coast. And that had not happened since the year 1776. And we all know what happened in that year. That was the birth of our nation. So let's look at this this code in this particular date. We're looking at the number 8/21. And the number 8/21, believe it or not, it means a watch. So this first eclipse is actually telling us to pay attention. This is not the kind of watch that you wear on your arm. This is the kind of watch where you look around like a watch in the night and you pay attention to any intruders that might be coming. And this was the very first word that we were given in Gematria. Now, that particular eclipse, it actually, this path of totality crossed over 7 cities in the United States named Salem. And our connection to that is there is a biblical reference to Salem, which means peace, by the way. And Salem is actually another name for Jerusalem. And what I find to be interesting, and I think this is common knowledge now, but possibly our connection, at least our code connection to this, in the name Jerusalem, are the 3 letters that are found right smack dab in the middle, and those are the letters USA. So we have a huge connection to all of this that is happening. Now, there's a lot that can be said about what this eclipse accomplished, but what I want to bring out right now is that particular eclipse that goes from the west coast to the east coast, it ended or exited the United States in Fort Sumter. And Fort Sumter was where the Civil War, the American Civil War, began. So I find that to be a very interesting point. We're going to tie all of that together here in just a minute. Now, the second sign actually is not located on this particular slide, and I just didn't have time to really get the slide that does that, but it basically crosses in a different area, and it happens on 10/14 of 2024. So that one we've not gotten to yet, but we're going to get back to the other one that you see that forms the X. That is the one that kind of goes up there from Texas, let's say it comes up through Mexico, goes through Texas, and then goes up there through the state of Maine. That is the one that we're going to be paying attention to here in just a minute. But let's look at the second sign. I apologize, I don't have that on this particular slide, but that one occurred. It occurs on 10/14 of 24, so that will be happening in October. And I believe that. So we're going to look at that date real quick. If we look at that date, we got the 10/14, and I always like to drop the 0 and see what I've got. If we do drop that 0 in Strong's, we have the number 114. And what 114 means, I find this to be very relevant to what we're talking about here. It means to make of no effect. And it means to make of no effect and to do away with something. And the other word that is associated with 114 in Strong's, I told you there are two, and that is the word powerful. So in my estimation, what this is telling us is that something very powerful, or someone very powerful, is about to make something go away, to make something of no effect. This is very promising for us because we have been through it. And we've had enough of it. And I believe that God is giving us all of the signs that we need to let us know, those of us that are paying attention, that He's on the job and that this is all about to turn around and change. So we're talking about the number 114. Let's go ahead and flip that. What would that be? Well, that would be 411. And 411 is a modern information code, isn't it? If you get my 411. So that word that I found very interesting in Strong's is the word inexpressible. And so I am very convinced that something unprecedented, something inexpressible is about to take place. We're already seeing the signs of it. We know it's coming, and they know it's coming. So this is very troubling to them. That's why they're knocking down bridges, and they're going to continue until they no longer can. So let's go ahead and go to slide number 4 now. I'm going to be covering the April 8th eclipse on this. And what we're seeing here in this third sign of Jonah, this is the date that we are looking forward to right now. And that is, let's see, it's April the 8th, 4/8 of 2024 this year. And what I find to be very interesting is that in all of the United States of America there are only 7, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cities by the name of Nineveh. Isn't that ironic? And they're all right over there near this eclipse path. So what's interesting about that, and I will comment on a few things, is that this particular eclipse enters the United States at Eagle Pass, Texas, and that is where the American Civil War officially ended. According to Troy Brewer, who is a pastor from Texas, he has said that the last Confederate soldier, the last living Confederate soldier, buried the last Confederate flag there in Eagle Pass, which has been in the news lately, by the way, and that officially ended the Civil War. So what we're looking at here is one of these eclipses. It exits America where the Civil War begins, and this one that will happen on the 8th of April, it enters the United States where the Civil War ended. So this seems kind of like Back to the Future kind of stuff to me. I find that to be very, very relevant. And so if we look at these Ninevehs here, by the way, there are voices out there that are reporting that all of these Ninevehs are going to be in the path of totality. As you can see, that is not accurate. There are only 2 of them that are actually in the path of totality, if you look south of Michigan there. And one is in Nineveh, Ohio, the other one being in Nineveh, Indiana. Now, if you go down into Texas, you can see that there is another one that comes fairly close. Nineveh, Texas, and then there's another one. I believe it's in the state of New York, Nineveh, New York, very close to that path of totality. But hey, the Bible tells us that let everything be established by 2 or 3 witnesses, and based on that, boom, we're there. We just made it. And so the Nineveh stand, and they do count, and they are all really close, by the way, to the states that this eclipse is going to pass over. So I find that to be extremely relevant based on the Nineveh story that we just heard. What this is telling us, in my estimation, is that we are being given this warning, the same warning. It's time for us to repent, to do that thing, to stop, to turn around, go in the opposite direction, because the direction or the path that we have been on has led us into the potential of destruction, the potential. The choice is up to us, just like it was in Nineveh. So let's just go ahead and we'll move on from there. It's just important to realize that we have to make this choice. That was my main point. So again, the first eclipse leaves at the start of the Civil War. The last eclipse enters at the end of the Civil War. What are the chances of that happening? Very, very unusual. And what happens here with these 3 eclipses? Unfortunately, I don't have the slide to show you this, but what these 3 eclipses do is they form a Paleo-Hebrew Aleph and a Paleo-Hebrew Tav. Now, what is important about that? The Paleo forms of these words are the most ancient forms that we no longer use. Those letters have been changed, but in the Paleo, what we're seeing is an Aleph Tav. That is the beginning and the end. It's just the same thing as Jesus saying, "I am the beginning and I am the end." As a Hebrew, he probably did not say that. He probably said, "I am the Aleph Tav." And if we see slide number 6 right now, I'm going to get a drink of water, and we're going to go ahead and look at something that pertains to this idea. Now we'll go back to the last one there, the one that had right there. Now what we're seeing there is a Paleo Hebrew Aleph on the right. Looks like an A that kind of fell over to the side, and the Tav is an X or a cross. Very, very interesting. This is the first and this is the last. Now, if we take a look at that X, we're kind of like reminded of this idea that we have X marks the spot. And I believe that that is very, very telling because of what this means. There are some different things that I will get to, different meanings of this letter. But just for now, let's suffice to say that to me, this is actually God writing a message on our country. He's using dark shadows to do that. He's using light and darkness simultaneously. This is being written on the sky. It's being written on the ground of our troubled nation right now. And I believe that it sort of reminds me as a Christian, and I'm a way outside of the box thinker when it comes to that. I am not into denominations because they love to denominate things, and I'm not into that anymore. I was. But X marks the spot. This reminds me of the story in John. I think it's John 8. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is where Jesus, a woman caught in adultery, was brought to Jesus to try to trick him. And he stoops down and he's writing something in the sand and basically waiting to see what everybody is going to do. And he tells them, whoever of you is without sin, let them cast the first stone. That's how they like to kill people. The Jews anyways did. And I believe that what's happening here is that God is symbolically looking and waiting to see if we will ourselves drop our weapons. And, you know, we need to do this, in my estimation, because if we don't, we end up just like Jonah. And if we take things on in our own understanding, and if we try to do things in our own way, sometimes we find that we are like Jonah, swallowed up by misfortune. And if we take it too far, we have a tendency to experience judgment, and that is never fun. So let's just go ahead and leave that part there. If we go to 2 Chronicles 7:14, I find this to be a very important scripture for us today. It's a familiar one. Many of you are well aware of what it says. It says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then I will hear from heaven. And then he says that he is going to turn things around and heal our land. That's not a direct quote. I just wanted to kind of let you know about this point. God says here, if my people who are called by my name. Now, notice there, he's not speaking to any religion in particular. He is saying, if the people who will align with me, if the people who will align with my name, we're talking about that name that we looked at earlier, the tetragrammaton. It's encoded into our DNA. We might as well align with it anyway. And this is not, to be evangelistic. If God wants to reach you, he's going to reach you, whether you talk to a minister, a preacher, or pastor or not. God has his ways of doing this. So God is saying, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. And I believe that includes all of us, because it is going to take every single one of us to change this world and turn it around into what it is that God originally planned for it to be. And I'll talk about that here briefly here in a moment. I'm just trying to see if I'm on schedule. I don't know how much more time I have. But look, let's look at it this way. The king of Assyria, who was an absolute non-believer, he figured it out and realized what was about to take place, and realized that the only way out of it was to turn around, to stop the things that they were doing that was not, conducive to this relationship to God. Now, I believe that we just have to get things right, and we have to get things right with God, and we have to get things right with our fellow man. So if we have anything in our hearts, offense of any kind, it's time for us to reconsider that position and let that stuff go, because it's not hurting the other people. It's only hurting us. And that, I believe, is the entire point that God is making. So let me move on. I actually did a second part in my series called Dark Mark Light Code. So in the Dark Mark Light Code, I actually was referring to a passage in the book of Genesis. I meant to have it here in front of me. I'd like to just go ahead and see if I can just read it to you real quick, if I can locate it. In Genesis 1, verse 14, it says this, and God said, let there be light in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. So this sets up the precedent that God uses the sky to give us messages. And I believe he does this because the entire gospel message, the entire Bible, is written on the stars. It's written on the stars. The planets act out the parts. And this is the study of astrotheology, quite a fascinating study. And I believe it's up there for the people who don't have access to the book. And there are plenty of people in the world who do not. So in Genesis 1:14, I want to pay attention to just one word in there, and that is the word signs. And what this word means in that passage, it means a sign in the sense of appearing. A sign in the sense of appearing. So this is something that you're going to see. And it's kind of hard, unless you're like in a basement somewhere, to avoid seeing a solar eclipse. Now, there will be parts of the country that will not see it, but many people that do see it are not going to forget it. And it's also has a meaning of signal. It has a meaning of omen, and it has the meaning of the word mark. So the tav, the X, the mark that we're talking about here, it actually means truth. It means perfection. It means completion, and it is an ending. Make no mistake about it. Something drastic is coming to an end. And I want to say that the end obviously is only a beginning. And I'm going to give you a little secret knowledge here if you're not aware of it. The very first word in the Hebrew Bible is the word Bereshit. And this word is commonly translated to mean in the beginning. I'm telling you right now that even a beginner Hebrew student can tell you that that is a mistranslation. It does not mean in the beginning. It means in a beginning. And that is a very, very big difference. The earth is very old, and there have been many, many different, retoolings of what goes on here on the planet. We think that we are the modern ones that are the only ones in history. That's not true. So in a beginning is more accurate. I want you to consider that idea. Now, next I would like to cover another aspect to this word or this letter Tav. And you will find this in Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 4. Not going to read that to you right now, but Ezekiel 9:4 is basically talking about, Jerusalem. And it's talking about a mark that God is going to place on the foreheads of his people in a time of great distress. Actually, it says a time when men are approaching with deadly weapons. And this is a mark of protection for God's people. And I believe that the Tav over America, not only is it a message of drastic change, it is also a message of hope. It is a message of protection for those of us who will hear and respond to his message. I believe that God does not want us to be in fear. In fact, this term, have no fear, or, something very, very similar to this idea, no fear, it appears 365 times in the King James Version of the Bible. So this is giving us hope and protection and telling us that we are not to fear every single day of the year. Now, the dark mark that I'm going to refer to in this message is kind of a play on the Harry Potter series. In the Harry Potter series, the dark mark was something that was taken by those who were willing to basically steal, kill, and destroy. And that was their sign to each other that they were in that little club. And there are certainly a lot of people that are in that club, but I believe that that is going to be completely overturned and overthrown in the very, very near future. Now, I've always loved Make America Great Again. I believe that that is also not just speaking about our nation, but speaking about the world. And I believe that it is a return to our reliance on God. I believe it's a return, at least in America, to the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. And here's some really good news. The very first time that we hear light mentioned in the Bible is in Genesis 1. I believe it's Genesis 1:3. This is the familiar one where God says, "Let there be light," and there was light. One of the translations to that word goes beyond the idea of illumination, and it actually is describing happiness, cheerfulness. So God is literally saying there at the very beginning of this recreation of the world, let there be happiness. I believe that that was the original intention of what this was to be about here. But obviously it has been taken over. And so all of that had to be dealt with. All right, so the book of Jonah, the story of Jonah, and Jonah, the name Jonah, by the way, means dove. It means a dove. And we see that as a symbol of peace. We see that as a symbol of the Holy Spirit. And so I want you to take these into your heart and consider them, because the book of Jonah basically taught us how to escape judgment. And we just went through the Feast of Purim, and that is connected to the book of Esther. And that Esther story is playing out in our country and around the world right now. We just went through the 2 days of Purim, and now we are going to talk a little bit about what it actually meant to us and means to us symbolically. So, the name Esther means star. So we're back up in the sky again. Esther. And it is actually the 17th book of the Bible. Wow, that's important. It's important to us anyway. And so the Cliff Note version of the story of Esther is that, Esther was a Hebrew, and apparently the king, was out partying one night, King Xerxes, and he got to the point where he wanted to spend some time with his queen Vashti. Vashti is what her name was, and she was not in the mood, and she refused. And so this really incensed the king, and so his council basically told him that he would be better off to find another. And so he made a decree that went out to the young available women of his country, and basically he brought in a group of women that would spend a year. They would spend a year getting ready to be with the king, and he had his eyes on this one particular woman named Esther. And actually, he was kind of infatuated with her, and went and checked on her every single day during her beauty treatments. And it got to the point where he actually cut him short, and just because he wanted to make her his queen. Well, the story goes that Esther's cousin, his name was Mordecai, and Mordecai raised her and brought her to the attention of the king's people as this decree went out. And so there was a murder plot against the king that Mordecai overheard, and ended up getting word to the king about that. And as a result of that, the king remembered him and wanted to do something very, very wonderful for him. Now, as it goes on, this story, I don't really have time to tell you the whole thing, but the top official of King Xerxes was named Haman. And Haman was very, very upset and angry at Mordecai because he would not bow down to him. Mordecai served the living God, and the God of the Hebrews, and did not want to worship a man in this way, and refused to bow down. So Haman concocted a plan. He tricked the king into signing a decree that would put all of the Jews to death, including Esther, who the king had actually made his queen by this time. So there are many, many parallels to this in our time. The plan became well known by Mordecai and all of the Jews there, and the word got to Esther, and Esther was asked to go to the king and to reveal this evil plan to kill a whole group of those people, the Jewish people. And ends up happening that Esther has to risk her own life to kind of break in to the king, which was against the law. I mean, you would be killed for this. She bravely went about this and did it, and it was accepted by the king, and set up a banquet that basically exposed Haman. And as a result of that, Haman was put to death in the same manner that he had set up to kill all of the Jews. And this is the precedent that was set. There's some really, really heinous and gross things that you can find out about how they killed these people. But hangers also died as a result of this evil plot. So there are a lot of parallels here. We can change these names to names familiar with today. We see the whole thing being set up in the exact same way. And I believe that what is being revealed to us through the book of Esther is that, like the story of Esther, we ourselves are going to be delivered, and we ourselves are going to see our enemies, those who set up these plots and plans against us. They will be dealt with in the same way that they intended for us to be destroyed by. This is something that I wanted you to see, because I believe that these eclipses are telling us all about these two ideas. One, how to turn away from what we're doing, cry out to God, and receive mercy. And the other one is how to go about exposing the evil that is coming against us with the intention of actually killing us. So there is great hope here. I do not see this as something that we should be in fear of. I believe that we are actually being told of our plan for salvation and how to be saved from all of this. Now, besides all of that, I see this as a remake or a replay. They love to do that with movies now. I think that that is what we are going to experience here. And not only do these two stories reveal to us what we can expect that we will see, the turnaround of all of this, there is also the coming April 22nd Passover event that we know to be the Red Sea moment, and that is the deliverance of God's people in a very powerful way. I believe that these three stories that I'm just briefly kind of trying to rush through, these are the dress rehearsals, and they are the dress rehearsals for our time. We are actually going to be the main event, and we are the main event right now, because we're not waiting for this to happen. It's already happening right now. I just would say that what I learned from the Red Sea experience was this. We have to be careful about our complaining, because we will be delivered from this, and we just have to be thankful and grateful for it. And by the way, not going to go into this, but many of you know this, some of you may not know this, but that Red Sea moment, that deliverance from Egypt, was actually the first wealth transfer. And that happened in that story as well. So we need to pay attention to these things. Many people see the Bible as this old, outdated book full of boring stories. I think that the Bible is so contemporary once you get beyond the kind of crazy names and, the Middle English versions of the Bible. If you can look at it in a way that is maybe sometimes more symbolic or metaphoric, then you will see that this is not all meant to be taken literally. And those parts that are meant to be taken literally are going to be playing out in the very ways that they were meant to. So we also have, let's not forget, the resurrection coming up, the passion of the Christ. So we have these four events that we are being shown right now in rapid sequence. And I want you to know there are other connections to this idea about connecting Jonah and Esther together. This happens, like here's one weird example. The one of the modern enemies of Israel right now is the leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. And if you look at his name actually has the name Haman encoded within it. And also he was born under an eclipse himself. So there are so many, many different aspects to this and layers that point to an unmistakable conclusion. And that is that we are about to be delivered from the evil that we have been experiencing. Don't forget, God said initially, let there be happiness. So let's all get happy about this, and let's see the positivity in this, and let's see the possibilities in what is about to transpire in our lives, not only in America, but around the world as well. So I'm going to go ahead and end it right there. There's so much more that I could talk about, but it's pretty much already obvious, I think, by now, that we can look at this in one of two ways. We can get all scared, and we can, be the loosh machines that they're asking us to be, or we can, sometimes we may have to just humble ourselves and turn from the things that we are doing and seek the face of God. That is the answer, and that is our way out. And this is the message of the eclipse that I wanted to bring to this special group here tonight, because I believe that you get it. And I believe that you are looking for hope and you're looking for answers. And hopefully you have found them in this message. So I'll turn this back over to you, Teresa, and thank you very much for the opportunity to let me bring this to your very, very wonderful group of people here tonight.
Thank you so much. The comments in the chat were off the charts. Thank you. Thank you. We love this. So interesting. Fantastic. And so I don't think they really want you to stop. So hopefully we'll just keep going when we go to the Q&A. You're coming over the Q&A?
Sure.
Okay.
I would love to.
Okay, so we're going to take like a 10-minute break just to transition to get over to the different platform. Everyone's invited. All right, so people keep asking, please add me to the chat. It's open. We opened it for you. So everybody can just click. You can just go there. And we've been putting the link in over and over. So find the link and just go. You're invited to the party. All right. And then after the Q&A, we're going to leave the chat open for you to party on your own and enjoy each other until, 10 o'clock? We're going to close at 10? And that's what time frame?
Well, it's 8:20 now. 8:20 is about 8:30. Yeah, that'll give you an hour and a half.
10, which time?
Oh,
zone?
10 Central.
Central. 10 Central. So
Okay.
11 Eastern. Okay. All right. So you'll get to enjoy that. All right. And thank you so much, Thomas. This has been so good. It's like, wait, say that again. Say that again. So I'm going to have my own questions when we get over to the Q&A because I want you to elaborate on some things. So,
Okay.
All right, wonderful. All right, we'll see you in 10 minutes and we'll be over on the chat. All righty.
Very good.
All right, see you in just a minute.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.